The Ottoman Empire didn't lose World War I because they were weak. They lost because the game was rigged before a single shot was fired. And the proof? The British French were literally drawing lines through Ottoman land, while Ottoman soldiers were still dying in the trenches. The segment label, here's something they don't teach you. The phrase segment of Europe wasn't a natural observation. It was political warfare. Everybody who has a little bit sense know it. The Tsar Nicholas I of Russia coined it in 1853. Why? Because Russia wanted the Ottoman Empire to look dying, a dying empire in by vultures. And Russia had been eyeing Istanbul, which they called Constantinople, their Mecca, for over a century. Control that city, you control Bosphorus. Control the Bosphorus, you control the gateway between Black Sea and the Mediterranean. That's not a geography, that's for Russia, that's everything. So they started calling the Ottomans sick, more of a psychological warfare, and the rest of Europe started believing it. The carve up was already happening. Here's the thing people miss. The Ottoman Empire wasn't just threatened by World War I. It had been getting eaten alive for decades before the war even started. Britain occupied Egypt in 1882. Temporarily, they said they stayed 70 years. France had been in Algeria since 1830, almost 90 years after World War I. And they had design on Syria and Lebanon territory the Ottomans still controlled. Russia had been chipping away at the Caucasus for generations, pushing south, pushing towards warm water ports, pushing towards Istanbul. Austria-Hungary was absorbing Ottoman territory in the Balkans. The Balkan Wars of 1912 and 1913, just 2 years before World War I, cost the Ottomans nearly all of their remaining European territory. They lost Rumelia, they nearly lost Idrin, a city that had been Ottoman for 500 years. Can you imagine? In 2 years, 2 wars gone, the Ottoman leadership looked at map of their empire in 1914 and saw it shrinking in real time. This wasn't paranoia, this was Tuesday. The decision to enter the war. So when World War I breaks out in the summer of 1914, the Ottomans don't immediately join. They negotiate, they actually approach Britain and France first. The intent and ask for a formal alliance and guarantee for territorial protection. Britain and France said no. They didn't take the Ottomans seriously as partners. They saw them as a patient on a table, not a player at the table. Germans said yes, and Germany made promise militarily support modernization and crucially a seat at the winners' table if the Central Powers won. So the Ottoman leadership, particularly Enver Pasha, made a calculated bet. If we stay neutral, we get carved up slowly. If we join the losers, we get carved up fast. If we join the winners, we survive. Maybe we even reclaim what we lost. It wasn't madness. It was a dying man choosing surgery over hospice. Sky is peacock. The betrayal in real time. Now, here's where it gets genuinely outrageous. May 1960. The war is still raging. The Gallipoli campaign has just ended. A campaign where Ottoman soldiers held off the entire British and Anzac invasion force. The Ottoman troops are fighting on multiple fronts, dying in the snow in the Caucasus, dying in the desert in Mesopotamia or Iraq, and in a series of secret meetings in London and Paris, two diplomats, Sir Mark Skies for Britain, France, Francois Georges Picot for France, are drawing lines on a map of Middle East. Not based on geography, not based on culture, language, ethnicity, or religion, based on what Britain wanted and what France wanted. A ruler on a map and two colonial appetites. Britain gets Iraq, modern Iraq, plus influence over Jordan and Palestine. France gets Syria and Lebanon. Russia gets a peace too. Parts of eastern Anatolia and influence over Istanbul. Yes, they were already negotiating Istanbul before the war was over. Crazy. The deal was secret. The Ottomans didn't know their soldiers were still dying when their land was being gift wrapped and divided. When the Bolshevik took power in Russia in 1917, they found the document in the Tsar files and published it. The whole world saw it. The Arab leaders who had been promised independence by Britain in exchange for revolting against the Ottomans. They saw it too, they had been lied to. Directly in writing, the promise of Arab revolt were never real. The aftermath. The Ottoman Empire officially dissolved in 1922, replaced by the Republic of Turkey under Mustafa Kemal Atatürk, who ironically was one of the commanders who won at Gallipoli, but the borders drawn by Sykes Picot, those become Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, and Palestine. Lines that cut across tribal territories, that divide ethnic groups, that lumped together communities that had been in conflict for centuries and split apart communities that had been unified for just as long. Almost every major conflict in the modern Middle East traces a route back to that map. The instability in Iraq, the civil war in Syria, the question of Palestine. These are an ancient hatreds that just appear. They were structured into the map by two men in London in 1916. The Ottoman didn't just lose a war, they lost a world, and the world that replaced them was designed deliberately to serve the empire that dismembered them. They called it the sick man of Europe, like it was a diagnosis. It was actually a plan. Drop a comment. Was entering World War I the right call for the Ottomans? Was there any version of this where they survived? Let's actually debate this. Assalamu alaikum.